Welcome to the Wise Old Soul. I'm your host, Lee Chandler, and together we are on a journey to a higher perspective. Well, good evening. Welcome to the Wise Old Soul, where everybody has their own wise old soul within them. And I'm fortunate enough to be able to interview and speak to some great people that really have some great wisdom, great stories to share for all of us to listen to. And tonight is no exception. We have Cynthia Sue Larson with us, an author, a podcaster, an individual who has spent a lot of time on her own and has really had the opportunity to awaken and share with many people. And I look forward to having a great conversation tonight, Cynthia. Welcome to the Wise Old Soul.
Oh, thank you. It's such a pleasure to be with you, and so fun to have this be live. So that's kind of exciting.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. We just like to have a conversation, and there's errors that take place, but I guess we're just human, aren't we?
Yeah, it's a way of experiencing flow, that dynamic sort of inspiration that's always moving through us. And I think sometimes we can get up in our heads and try to make things work exactly, and it doesn't always work out like that. And we can find that when we relax, like in music, you want to keep going. You don't want to stop the whole song and start over.
Sure. Well, we spoke earlier, just for a couple of minutes before we started, and we talked about this sense of knowing.
Yes.
That sense that's inside us, that we know what's right from wrong. We know what may be happening, may seem a little different, but we just seem to have that sense of knowing in us. And if I'm not mistaken, Cynthia, you spent a lot of time on your own, like almost 4 years. Would that be correct?
Well, not 4 years altogether, but I mean, I have spent a lot of time meditating by myself, and I do a lot of spending time in nature, just meditating in solitude that way, just being there, but not really feeling alone, because there's this connection that happens, especially when you enter into that deep stillness that can be part of these kinds of meditations, and really feel the presence of consciousness all around, and at a much deeper level than we're often informed is possible. So to the point where a squirrel would bring me an apple from the tree and bring it to my chair. These kind of things. It's not a tame squirrel. So, but there's an involvement that happens when there's that kind of a peacefulness in nature, and such a presence, and instead of rushing around like humans usually do, with that feeling of do, busy, make things happen, just to be present and to be just really still is an offering of sorts, and it's a way of sharing consciousness at a deep level that usually, I don't think it shows up in books or stories very often. Very seldom do we even know such a thing is possible.
Sure. You mentioned the squirrel bringing you an apple.
Yes.
We have such a connection, or if we choose to have that connection with nature.
Yes.
I had a great experience. My wife and I were in northern Thailand, and we ended up at an elephant rescue facility. And we went out and had the privilege of washing down some elephants. And this one elephant, a female, had been hit by a vehicle and broke her hip. And it had mended, but she was very much off kilter. And after feeding them and washing them down, I stood there and I put my hands gently on her trunk. And it was one of the most incredible gifts I had ever had up to that point, of just feeling nothing but pure love from this animal. She didn't move. I didn't move. There was just a connection that it was respect, but it was love between people and animal, just going, hey, here I am, and I like you and you like me, and thanks for washing me. And it was just literally profound.
That's so beautiful. Yeah, I think being open to these experiences is so important, especially with an animal, whether it's a wild animal or that elephant has obviously connected with humans before.
Sure,
But,
sure. So,
that's,
Cynthia, tell me, where did things all kind of start for you? Um, what was it like growing up as a young person, and what was your life like? And then how did you kind of swing into where you are today?
yeah, well, I was from the suburbs of California, born in Carmichael, to an engineer was my father and a school teacher mother. And I was the first of two children, so just a sister and myself. But in early childhood, I had a feeling that had I was pure consciousness. There's an experience that some people call born aware, and so I definitely remembered having been in this blissed out experience of existence before being born. And in some ways, this life experience on Earth seemed um, kind of jarring and a little bit uh, difficult at times. Not because I had a difficult childhood, it wasn't painful that way, but instead because I remembered the instant accessibility of all beings that's possible between lives, and just that feeling of profound love that we each have for one another. That's definitely a part of being between lives. So I remembered these things, and it was challenging for me to be here on Earth, actually. So to the point that I was kind of feeling like I'd made some mistake, or maybe it was the wrong planet. So there was a longing in myself to be between lives again, because it's so beautiful. Um, that provoked sort of an angelic intervention, if you want to call it that.
Hmm.
Because I was basically prepared to leave. I was realizing, oh, my parents didn't exaggerate. If I jump in front of a fast car just right, I won't be maimed. I can actually die and be, between lives again. Yay. So just feeling that longing for that bliss, that connection. But because I think my angelic guides could tell I was serious, then shortly after making that intentional decision, they slowed time to a stop, and they had this gathering of beautiful, glowing lights around me, very pastel, glowing orbs of light and just love. And they showed me that I had chosen to be here. And obviously, if I cut things short, then I'd be back again. That was news to me. I did believe them. And they also were showing me that there's much that I could do just to share who I am with others, and I could make a big difference to live. So I made that choice I was 5 years old, so I was choosing to live slow, meaning a long life, instead of fast, meaning leave right now or soon. So these angels said, yes, you have a choice. But if I chose to go fast and leave right at age 5, I'd be back again. And it would be devastating to my family, and I wouldn't have helped the people that I could help, and I'd lose the 5-year head start. So that I came away from that interaction with these angelic beings very enthusiastic, feeling recharged, and expecting that I would have these beings in my life, that this can be the way that we live. It can be an awareness. So I love the show that you're doing, this awareness that we have, this wisdom within that we can share with each other, because that is our true nature. We really are eternal beings. We are pure consciousness, and that's our true identity.
And so this happened at the age of 5.
Yes.
And so when you became aware of that, um, and that was back in the 70s.
I was born in 62, so it was 1967. So if you
And
can imagine what's going on then. It was,
very challenging. Um,
yeah.
how did you find fitting in with your friends? That you're pretty awakened for a 5-year-old, and pretty awakened even today to have that experience.
Yeah, well, I would see people. I can see people at their core, like the light being that they are, the expression of divinity that they embody in their physical form. So I tend to see past superficialities, and I would do that with friends. I would befriend often a child who didn't have any friends because I could see their heart and their soul. And so I often was friends with what you might call oddballs, but to me they're not oddballs. These are my friends, and they're beautiful. And so I just see the joy and the love inside. And sometimes I get interesting visions of people. I could sort of see who they'd be as they grew up. That was interesting. And it would just be occasional, like a flash. And I think, oh, it's amazing. I just get a glimpse of how they're evolving on their path. And that's beautiful. And sometimes I'd feel the presence of that desire, that heartfelt wish. Like I wish there would be people who care as much as I do about seeing the inside, the truth of who we are, such as yourself. And then I get to be on a show with you, and it's true joy. So I'm very happy.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And I've shared this story before, but our charity that we have, where we build houses primarily in Cambodia, um, the one saying that I say to people, because they always ask, they say, "What's it like?" And how do you explain that? That you don't do it necessarily for your own joy. You don't do it for any other reason than you want to make a difference in the world. And as I explain to people, I say the Lee Chandler who arrives in Cambodia is never the same Lee Chandler who leaves. It affects you at such a deep core, so deep inside that and I've said this many times, I could never ever repay the people that I've had the privilege to serve for what they've given me.
Yes.
It's unbelievable when you get to experience that. And I wish and I hope everybody at some point in their life can experience that, because it cracks you open in a way that many people don't think it's possible, I think.
Do you make that opportunity available for volunteers through your organization? Like maybe some people could get that opportunity.
We do. Great question, and thanks for interviewing me.
I'm just
I love sharing. It's wonderful. We do, and we get a lot of people that would like to come with us, and which is great. But what we've asked of people is that they raise enough money for at least half a house, and most people raise enough money for a full house, which allows them to become an ambassador, Cynthia, to come and work on that specific house. Or if the timing is such, they get to come and work on a house, though, and they can go and visit the house if it got pre-built or if it's not being built yet. But we do make it available for people, because I think when you work hard at raising the funds, not only are you experiencing the people, but you're looking at the people, and you raise the money, you are changing the life of these people in front of your eyes right now, whether it's a single mom, somebody that's physically challenged because of landmines, a single father who you just don't know. But
yes.
they all seem to have children and grandchildren, and they need food and they need housing. And when that housing comes around, it really stabilizes their lives.
Yes.
So
And there's something beautiful too about that contribution of time, effort, energy, and money. So you're giving people the opportunity to feel fully invested in what they're doing. And I've written a book, High Energy Money, which is,
mhm.
it sort of brings in this quality of money can, like I've had it just appear in my bank account. And I have an MBA degree and a financial background. I worked at Citibank. So I was doing forensic accounting to find out where did this money come from? Like, how did it just drop into my bank account? But it was exactly the amount that I'd thought that I needed in order to do a vacation. So that could be, I mean, this is one way that I've literally had that money just show up. And this happens so often,
Mhm.
but money is such a flow. It's such a way that we don't need to feel limited by it or feel like constrained by it. It's often, so it's a way that we can fine tune our own beliefs a little bit and become open to the recognition that it's really about sharing. It's like when we ask ourselves, what are we living for? and we get an answer, like, what are we living for? Is it hopefully not dying with the most toys, but something more aligned with being in service, with love, things that we would consider high qualities. And to live according to that can bring the greatest happiness. So even if people feel like right now they're not happy or the world's messed up, to do anything that's helpful to others can bring about a tremendous transformation in a very positive way for ourselves and for everyone around us.
I think for ourselves as much as anything. And I also believe in that as well, that if you're having a bad day, go do something for somebody else, because I'll tell you what, it'll brighten it up in the blink of an eye.
Yes.
You know,
and it doesn't need to cost anything. You can just smile. If you feel like, oh, I'm not ready to give the money yet, that's okay.
Absolutely. And and don't get me wrong when I say, for people raising money for us, because it's never, ever, ever the amount of money that's given. Never. It is always the intention in which it's given.
Yes.
I've had people that are very successful that have been more than happy to build a house for us. We're so thankful, we're grateful, and it's pocket change. We've also had other people that they're struggling. They don't have any money, and they gave me $2 still after getting one of our bracelets. And this young woman had children. She didn't have the money, and she says, Lee, I want to give you this. And it was a stretch for her, but that intention just is so, so powerful when it comes into play.
Yes. And it seems like it activates things. That's what I notice, that when people make that first step, it sort of opens up a gateway of flow can begin, where they really feel connected, maybe for the first time. Like maybe they felt like they couldn't give anything, and so they were holding everything tightly. But to relax and to open, it's kind of like when you open your heart, then you feel a flow of love.
Sure.
And it's just same thing with money. It's just so beautiful.
It is. Money's like water. It needs to move.
Yes.
And when it moves, water makes a larger impact, as does money. And I'm glad you brought up your book, because you've got 3 books out, if I'm not mistaken, or more.
Well, 5 in print. One's mostly like an ebook, and then I'm working on my 6th or 7th now. It'll be out this year. So, right. So the big 3 would be the quantum jumps, reality shifts, and high energy money. Those are like the big 3. But I've also got one on aura advantage and Karen Kimball and the Dreamweaver's Web. And then I mentioned Shine with the Aura of Success.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, can we touch on those books just a little bit?
Yes.
Terrific. I know that you mentioned, obviously, High Energy Money, which is the first one. And the one reason I'd like to talk about it is there's many people that I've heard say, money's evil. And from my perspective, it's the furthest thing from it. The love of having all the money for yourself, sometimes I would question. Yes. But the idea of having finances and more than what you need, it gives us that opportunity to be able to share it and give it away and make a difference. Because I've never found a financially poor individual help another individual financially, if that makes any sense. So if you don't have money, you can't help someone else that doesn't have money. So why don't you get some money, make your own life better, and make somebody else's life better? We attract that, as you said, when we open up and allow flow to happen.
Yes.
How does your book tie into that?
Yeah, thank you. It's a good segue. Well, I like to start where people are. So some people do have those beliefs. Obviously, there's a whole section, and it's a small book, but there's a section on taking a look at the beliefs. Like money is the root of all evil might be just a thought running through one's head, but you can recognize you can equally believe the opposite. Money could be the root of all good. It could be the beginning to be able to build a house for someone in Cambodia, for example. So just recognizing that beliefs can be rather arbitrary, and we can introduce the flip side of something that might have been a block to that flow. So in other words, if you're looking at a tightness in your heart, if is what you're physically feeling about money, just feeling like, oh, there's no love in it, recognize that there's an opportunity to feel love. So there's a section in the book that's dedicated to first helping a person identify beliefs that they may or may not realize that they're operating with, and then flip that to create personalized affirmations that are quite powerful as aids in assisting a person to get that flow of money going again. And then another important vital aspect of the book is to recognize that your personality and what your beliefs about money and just who you are might mean that you're open to receiving money in payment for work, services and goods that you provide. Another type of personality would be someone who's more of the investor, that they would like their money working for them. And then yet a third type of personality would be a person such as myself, who's open to just receiving money in your bank account. I've also had money show up dollar bill after dollar bill in my wallet, one after another, to pay a tip. So if you're open to these kinds of reality shifts, they can happen for you. But it requires, I think that's a special kind of mystical personality, but anybody can experience it. And just knowing it's possible can be the beginning of having a lot of fun with that kind of money enjoyment.
Being open.
Yeah.
Terrific. Well, and so your other book that I have noted here is Reality Shifts, and you also have
Yes.
a podcast that you talk about reality shifts a lot, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it's called, the podcast is Living the Quantum Dream, and I get to interview people who are in this field, like I am, of consciousness, but oftentimes with a scientific perspective. I recently interviewed Dr. Bernard Beitman, who wrote a book, Meaningful Coincidences, and I was able to talk with him about my 25 years studying these reality shifts that I've been looking into, and the kind of personalities, like what kind of people experience reality shifts, like the money just showing up, that kind of thing. And I've found something very similar to what Dr. Bernard Beitman has found, where I've been noticing and doing surveys to find out what are the personality traits that are similar with the experiencers. And my findings are that these are what you might call empaths or intuitive feelers. And on the podcast, Living the Quantum Dream, talking with Bernie Beitman, he has done some amazing research in the field of psychology, documenting that people who have these synchronicities they have common personality traits. They tend to be seekers of truth. They believe in something greater than themselves and are seeking actively to connect with that and receive messages from that. In other words, this is another way of looking at yourself at these levels of awareness, and that is another way of describing an empath or an intuitive feeler. So I was just so happy to hear that in that conversation with him.
It allows you the opportunity to, when you hear someone else literally align with you so well, I think we all can appreciate that. We feel like we're going down the right path then sometimes, just because occasionally it can be a very lonely trip.
Yes.
As we're discovering this stuff. So that's wonderful that you were able to get some reinforcement.
Yeah, that was great. And I've had conversations with Dr. Larry Dossey, just wonderful people on the show. And he's a medical doctor, but he's written some amazing books, such as One Mind, describing how animals and humans and nature are also interconnected. He's written so many beautiful books, like Reinventing Medicine. I think he's been an early pioneer in the field.
Mm-hmm.
And I've talked with Glenn Aparicio Perry, who's written a book called Original Thinking, and I met him through these wonderful conferences that I used to attend, gathering linguists, physicists, or scientists, and Indigenous wisdom keepers from around the world. And so that was it was called Language of Spirit, and some of the proceedings were documented and published. Leroy Little Bear was the Blackfoot Indigenous elder from Canada, a Blackfoot tribe. He's Harvard educated, and he was the original organizer for the event, working in collaboration with a linguist, Dan Moonhawk Alford, and a physicist. He was sort of the father of the holographic interpretation of quantum physics, and that's David Bohm. And so from that extraordinary beginning, these meetings would happen year after year, and I was very blessed to be able to be part of that. And that's how I met Glenn Aparicio Perry, who's been documenting and writing about some of the things that happened in those meetings, as well as his own experiences, and bringing this indigenous way of thinking back into daily life, because we're all from an indigenous place. We all have indigenous roots, and there's great wisdom there.
Indeed, and I think with Indigenous people, we're all connected. We're connected to the animals. We're connected to trees. We're connected to rocks.
Yes.
There is a consciousness that is through everything, and being able to tap into that is absolutely fascinating to me. I did a regression, Cynthia, a life regression, in which case I went back and I was part of the First Nations, and it was a very small group, and it gives me chills up the back of my neck when I think about that. And it's just, I so very much appreciate being able to tap into that, because I hadn't been able to tap into that until quite recently. That sense of knowing that I had, or I thought I had, really hadn't aligned yet.
Yeah, there's some deep wisdom there for sure. One of the things I like about Glenn Aparicio Perry's book, Original Thinking, he describes a story where he was tending a fire for a ceremony, and it was his job to keep an eye on the fire and make sure it didn't go out. And so he's doing that. He's keeping an eye on the fire. And I wasn't there at the time for that one, so I'm just reading the book and enjoying his story. And he said that I think he got sleepy. He's supposed to be awake all night long. I think it hadn't really occurred to him what this job entailed. And then he's realizing, like, oh my gosh, and like there's a lot to this. But at some point, it's kind of wild. It's like the fire was talking to him and getting him to like wake up and feed the fire at just the right time and to be aware of it. So that indigenous kind of a connection that we have, it's there. And I think it's part of a lot of indigenous initiation ceremonies, such as going out into the wilderness and really being aware, meditating with nature, being present with nature, being outside of our regular tribe, and therefore more open to experiencing whatever does come through, whatever the messages are, listening really deeply. And I think that's a characteristic of this indigenous knowing, that we tend to lose that in the shuffle of modern day life, checking our devices and staying on track with whatever seems to be happening according to our clocks and our calendars. But it's a whole different thing when you're engaging with nature, and you can trust that the fire will wake you up to feed the fire. That's amazing. That these things can happen, that we can have that level of connection without requiring some device that's plugged in and charged up. It can still work. We still have this intrinsic connection to one another that runs so deep.
In those types of connections, have you ever experienced or participated in like an anipi?
What's that?
A sweat lodge?
Oh, yes. Yeah, those are quite powerful. It's important to make sure you stay hydrated and that you're in the care of someone who knows what they're doing. It's
Very
obvious.
much so.
Yeah. And then make sure that your own health conditions allow you to participate as fully as you want to. And if there's anything that comes up, you're cared for. But having cleared all those hurdles, then it's profound. It's a great way to release toxins from the body on the physical level. And apparently there are fantastically good health benefits if you're able to do these things. But then in addition, if you're being guided by someone who's a shaman or who has the ability to bring in another level, then you can also feel the benefit of getting your energy field cleared through the inclusion of, some sacred branches from trees, which are often brought into the sweat lodge for clearing purposes. And it can be a beautiful experience full full sensory experience in addition to the high sense perceptions as well.
And I know I've done one, and that's all. And everything you said is exactly true. Um, I remember when they put some of the different leaves onto the rocks, and it would affect us in a little bit of a different way. And the temperature would hit a certain level, and you think, oh, I can't take anymore. And all of a sudden, you do. There's a little bit. I believe there's an altered state that you end up in, um, just by being present in the moment.
Yeah, it seems to balance these aspects of the nervous system. We've got the autonomic and parasympathetic nervous systems, and there can be that fight or flight that usually would propel us out of a situation that might seem dangerous. But if you're safe, again, with all those caveats that I mentioned earlier,
Very much so.
Once everything's sure, then you're right. You can absolutely go past some sort of point where you thought like you can't handle this, and you find there's a sense of calm and stability that can just take hold, and then you realize everything's fine, and it's amazing. It's not quite the same as going through childbirth and realizing that's okay, but it reminded me a bit of that, a little bit of that there. I mean, not the same thing, but similar in a way.
Well, if there's some similarities, then we men just got to experience this much of what you ladies have gone through.
A little bit, yes.
Well, this third book, and I get really excited about talking about quantum and quantum jumps, because much of what we've already talked about can be affected by quantum jumps, when things take place and what have you. So let's maybe talk about the book. Let's talk about quantum jumps.
Yeah, this one is near and dear to my heart. I put it together wrote it in 2013. So it's been out for a while, but it's timeless in the sense that it's covering the science of what we call in physics. My background is physics. I have a degree from UC Berkeley in physics, and I've also led some conferences like the Foundations of Mind conference, bringing together physicists such as the hippies who saved physics. So my goal with quantum jumps was to illustrate the concepts that are coming through at this time, not just from the field of quantum physics itself, but as it applies to quantum biology. We're starting to see evidence in our own bodies and in nature that everything is intrinsically quantum. And to people who don't have a background in physics, what I mean by that is that when you get into the realm of the so-called very, very small, and your physicists, scientists have been looking for the building blocks of nature. So they look first at, molecules, and then within the molecules, you have atoms. Within an atom, you've got these quantum particles, which would be what we know of as the electron. That's definitely a quantum particle, meaning it's indivisible. So it naturally is sort of a tiny thing. There are subatomic particles, yes, but we're sticking with just this metaphor right now, the analogy of the electrons, the neutrons, these are the components of the atom itself that are quite small. Photons are also quantum particles, and so when physicists such as Max Planck, he was the father of quantum physics, he came up with the word quanta to indicate it's a packet, it's something that can't be divided, So that was the original idea. But things got really strange. This is over 100 years ago now. So the other physicists in the field that you may have heard the names of would include people like I've mentioned, David Bohm, coming up with an interpretation of what's happening with quantum physics. Why are we noticing things at the quantum scale, the Planck scale, very, very, very small scale, where, for example, a photon can act sometimes like a wave function, smeared over all possibilities, so it's not really clear where it is, or it can be a particle absolutely located in space and time. That's one strange quality. There are many qualities to quantum physics that are quite strange. Things like quantum tunneling, where a quantum particle can go through something solid to the other side. quantum teleportation, very similar. It can be here and then suddenly over there. There's something called entanglement, which is where one quantum particle can have spin up and the other one's spin down. If you take a measurement on this one, you know for sure that the other one is also in the same position. And if they change, you know they're changing together. That's entanglement. So it's the basis by which all of our technologies based on quantum physics are now happening, such as the internet, quantum computers, our cell phones, all these technologies. So my book, Quantum Physics, is taking the very strong, amazing foundation of this quantum physics and bringing it into this world of recognizing that you and I and everyone and everything else is actually a quantum being also, and that we are, just like a quantum particle could be in a superposition of states simultaneously, like a wave function and also a particle. We can be that way too. And we see evidence of this in our daily lives. And so the book is basically, it starts off, very practical and sharing real life, firsthand laboratory tested experiments showing that if you, for example, you put something in your mouth, I'm trying to find a pen, here's one. So if you put a clean instrument like a pen or a pencil in your mouth and turn the corners of your mouth up, scientific studies are showing absolutely that person who's doing that for some period of time will experience something as if they've been smiling. You'll experience a boost in your joy, and things will be funny to you that weren't funny earlier. And this has been tested. You can point your fingers to your head or tap your head, and you'll actually score higher on intelligence tests. Your IQ will be boosted. You'll be smarter. You can point toward your heart, and you'll actually receive the benefit of sort of heart intelligence, feeling like you're able better to communicate and connect with others. So this book, Quantum Jump, starts with simple things like that, and progressively by the end of the book, it's showing how to make quantum jumps that may seem impossible, things where you can recognize that we are living in this quantum universe with quantum possibilities, possible timelines, if you will, that are just adjacent to us. You can totally jump to them once you're in full alignment with yourself and you've got that true need to be in an elevated timeline. So if you're sick and you need to get over the cold instantly, you can do that. So it's a book all about that with lots of exercises.
And you've experienced some of those things in your life as well, haven't you?
All the time, yes. I think I'm a professional timeline jumper. So, I've been doing this for a long, long time. And so for me, coming out and talking about it openly, that was scary about 25 years ago. But now this is the space I'm occupying. So I feel like I'm a front runner, and I'm not the only one. There are lots of us who are tapping into this wisdom. And this, again, it's indigenous wisdom. These are things that have been known about for a long time, maybe with new words now, but it's quite well tested.
Well, I think, again, you share your stories, you're sharing your wisdom, you're sharing that old soul from within and allowing people to move up to a higher perspective. But more importantly, you're giving them permission. You're
Yes.
giving people permission to think differently, or the thoughts that they may have had, they're not crazy.
Yes.
Many of the things that they've done, seen, heard, feel are real. It's not something that it's all in your mind, which through the 60s, 70s, and a lot of the 80s, that's what we were told.
Yeah, that was what people told us, but maybe fortunately, I was experiencing something different. So it does take a lot of courage to stand up to what's being taught as the official story. But thanks to quantum physics and thanks to studying quantum physics at UC Berkeley, which is one of the top universities in the world, I was able to clearly see, like, oh my gosh, I'm seeing the foundational basis for everything that I'm witnessing, where we can literally be in one reality 1 second and in another the next second, and it's just equally real. This is quite viable, and it's something that we can all experience, so that if we need those kind of, you might call it a miracle or a quantum jump, it's there for all of us. Now it's not something that may happen on performance all the time on demand, and I think a lot of people want that. They want that kind of automated thing. They want a robot that delivers miracles for them. But if we think back to our wisdom roots, our indigenous roots, then we know, is that really what's best for us? To have some automated robot or AI doing everything for us? I'd say no. The point is to learn how to open our hearts, open our minds, and be there for each other, and to become better people. When we're doing that, then we're on track. And then obviously these kinds of daily miracles can happen and flow.
Very much so. Very much so. Yeah, AI, I think there's some great places for it, but there's also some real scary stuff with it. You touched on a couple of things just there, and one of them is, the idea of having AI work within us. I kind of go, let's just stay with us, because we have
Thank you.
this magnificent computer that we use so very little of it. And
Absolutely. Yeah, we can trust ourselves. You don't need I don't need an alarm clock. I can wake up from just telling myself I need to wake up at this time. I still don't have a cell phone, so I know we don't need them. That's not necessary to lean in. I know it sounds weird not to have a cell phone in this day and age, but I still work with technology. Obviously, we're live streaming right now. This is quantum technology. This is very cutting edge. So I'm not adverse to that, but I agree with you. I'd rather not have the AI making choices for me. That's the cutting point where you can tell like things are off. If you're giving away your sovereignty to some sort of an automated system, that would be where we don't need to do that. And that's not a good direction to go.
sure.
So otherwise, I think AI can be a good friend. I think it's clear to me that AI will be able to harness some of these quantum jumping techniques, and it's good for humans to be doing that right alongside. We need to not lose our edge, as human beings, that we can change the weather. We can experience the Mandela effect. We didn't talk about the Mandela effect.
No,
That
but that's right where I was going to be going, because I think with the
Yeah.
quantum jumps, the Mandela effect
Oh
comes,
yeah. That's next.
literally dovetails right together.
It's exactly right there. That's my next book that's coming out this year. It's about the Mandela effect and its society, because it's about us, and it's about people working together. We're observing the Mandela effect. If people don't know what it is, it's named after Nelson Mandela.
Mhm.
People noticed he was alive again after a lot of us remembered that he'd passed away. He'd died sadly on Robben's Island, where he was incarcerated in South Africa. That's what I remember back in the 80s. And then a lot of us were surprised to see he was alive again. I'd already noticed a lot of people alive again. I wrote about Larry Hagman alive again in my book, Reality Shifts, When Consciousness Changes the Physical World. So it wasn't so shocking to me that this particular individual was alive again. It was just like, wow, there's another one. But that's the one that caught traction. That's what the Mandela effect is named after, because Fiona Broome attended, I think, a conference called Dragon Con, and she was talking with a number of people who all basically agreed, like, we remember, Nelson Mandela, he died and now he's back. So this is what I'd been calling the alive again phenomenon, and that's where this gets its name. But the Mandela effect itself is actually any situation where there's a large, or maybe even a small group of people that remember things very specifically in a unique way, like the Fruit of the Loom logo that's on t-shirts and underwear. People might remember there's a bunch of fruit, and then ask yourself, what else do you remember about that logo? Is there anything special about it that you remember, if you remember the logo at all? A lot of us remember that there was a cornucopia, a very special kind of basket, not any old basket with a handle, not a platter, not a dish, nothing like that, but a very specific cornucopia with a fruit in it. And that's never been the logo. So that would be another example. People might remember the Berenstain or the Berenstain Bears. And it's confusing. Sometimes we remember both. Like, well, which is it? Is it Berenstain Bears or the Berenstain Bears? I think now it's always supposedly been the Berenstain Bears, but a lot of us remember the Berenstain. I don't know what you remember, but
Yeah,
that's a big one.
the Steen is what I recall.
Yeah, it's never been that actually. So that's kind of shocking for a lot of people. For me, the physiological changes are shocking, like the heart moving. Now it's in the center of the chest. I remember put your hand over your heart on the left side of your chest, but now they'd have to, the teachers would have to say, put your heart over your hand in the center of your chest. It's moved. The kidneys have moved up. So many things are changing from what I and other people remember.
Sure.
It's this is not. I know that there's a theory. If you go to Wikipedia and you look it up, then you'll see that people say it's confabulation, misremembering, so on and so forth. That's jumping to an assumption. That would be assuming that the reality is not able to shift. I know the reality is able to shift. Therefore, I would say it's more like mismatched memories, or a whole bunch of us remember things differently. So remembering things differently, having a different memory from what the official history is,
Sure.
this is going to give us the exactly what we need to be able to navigate any kind of possible challenges that humanities might think is above our ability to deal with it. So we've got the toolbox. And to me, this is extremely important. And it's no accident that the Mandela effect has arrived right now.
For us.
Yeah, for us. Mm-hmm.
You know, as you talk about all these different things, one of the sayings that I know you're aware of, and you've used it before, and that is, in every situation, good, bad, indifferent, whatever, you can always ask yourself, how good can it get?
Yes.
You know, which to me, you're saying, adjust you and it'll get better. Adjust
Yes.
you and it'll get better.
Yeah, this is riffing off the work of another physicist. I want to give credit where credit's due. This would be John Archibald Wheeler. He's if you've heard of black holes, white holes, the
Mhm.
participatory universe, it from bit, that's all John Wheeler. He was a contemporary of Einstein. Um, so Albert Einstein would often go on long walks and talks with John Archibald Wheeler. And so this idea is this participatory universe idea is that you can ask nature a question and nature always answers. So when we know that that's going to be the case, that if you're thinking a question like how good can it get, and you're asking that question, you'll get that answer. So it becomes, I think, the best additive to add to any other question you might be asking. A lot of people say like, oh my gosh, this went wrong, that went wrong, what next? Okay, it's okay to say what next, but add in, and how good can it get?
It's a simple little segment of words, and it
Yeah,
can literally shift. It can shift everything in your life in the moment.
absolutely. And it's extraordinary. It's one of those things I would recommend if people have never tried it, give it a try. There's no downside that I've ever seen to it. It just seems to elevate situations from what seemed like, well, this is going right down the tubes. Like this is a disaster. Like,
Mhm.
well, I guess we can laugh about it. Maybe it'll be funny someday. And then you say, how good can it get? And then suddenly just like what? Like everything turns around and the
Sure.
situation you thought it was is completely different. People are much kinder. Miracles happen. Things just out of the blue for no reason start happening. So it's kind
Oh,
of
yeah.
like kids today. They look for cheat codes in games, and if this is a simulation, if it's a game, well, there's your master level cheat code. So
There it is. Yeah. Because many people do talk about that we're just in this dream right now. We're in
yeah.
something that's fictitious. I'm not, I guess we could talk about that for another hour as well, couldn't we?
Yeah, definitely. That's the idea in my book, Reality Shifts, when consciousness changes the physical world, because this is like a waking dream, and we often don't realize that. We think like you can wake up, that would be lucid dreaming when you wake up inside of a sleeping dream. What happens when you wake up inside of this dream? What? Well, that's really cool, because what happens when you wake up inside of this dream is what we might call enlightenment, or just walking this sort of a miracle existence where everything that we're thinking can be manifesting in real life, in the real world. And it doesn't happen all the time. That's probably a good thing, because sometimes we're having a wonky day and we don't want everything we're thinking to manifest like that. But this totally matches with the dream time of the Australian Aborigines. They talk about the dreaming and the dream time, and the recognition that we're all able to access this sort of original dream that we're all in. And that's powerful. To me, that's the original simulation. I think the Indigenous people had it. They were there first. We have a new word for it, simulation, and we're talking about programmers. But I think we need to give credit to where credit's due, to the dreaming concept. And that was there. And I think it's beautiful, because that's the natural idea. We all dream, even if we don't all know that we're programming. So we can feel what that feels like, to wake up inside of our dreams.
That's if you can remember enough of them.
That's a good start. Yeah.
Very much so. Cynthia, you mentioned somebody actually in your bio as well that I had an opportunity to get to know a little bit, but this is back in 1996. I had the privilege of going with Deepak and Wayne Dyer across Canada. We did 4 cities, and then I went with Wayne and Louise Hay, and we went to Europe and did 5 countries over there. And so I was able to spend some time with them. But you talk about, you've been with Deepak many times. Obviously, you've been on a host of programs across the planet, from what I can tell. But what was it like to be with Deepak?
Yeah, he's wonderful. I got to be on his show in New York City, so that was a treat. His studio is inside of another business. I think in New York, that's just the way things are. It's like a whole other world. So it was very special. I loved getting to talk with him about my ideas in quantum jumps. And I think I was able, it felt so good for me to be able to thank him, especially for the work he's done to help people recognize the importance of meditation.
Mm-hmm.
He's been a huge thought leader in that area. I know so many people have done a lot, but it felt really wonderful to be able to appreciate and acknowledge him that way. I know he was interviewing me, but that felt fantastic. And I love the way that he's just so down to earth, recognizing that quantum jumps might sound kind of crazy to some people. I think he even said that in the interview. And I appreciated that, because I know it sounds crazy to a lot of people. I'm aware of that. I mean, I know it sounds crazy to my family, my parents, my sister, but they also are the ones when something needs like a miracle switch, or the dishwasher broke and it needs to work, or whatever the thing may be. They'll say, "Can you do that thing you do?" And so I know it sounds crazy, but the stuff really works. Like when you know it works, and it's just a matter of feeling this joy, like laughing, like we're doing,
Right.
Right. And it may seem like this is crazy, because it doesn't. The reason it sounds crazy is because if this is all it takes, you just laugh and it works. Well, that would work for everyone, and then people would say, "But it's not working for everyone." I get it. Okay, there may be some extra meditation hours involved, and probably so, yes. And doing your shadow work so that you're not interfering with yourself. Yes, there's all that. But once you've got that lined up and you've done your years and years of work, then absolutely, this is the way nature intends for us to be connecting with each other. And I just loved working with Deepak, because he's like a little kid. When he's lit up, he's just like a little boy, and it's just so fun and wonderful to see that. So,
we were in Calgary, which is my hometown, where I was born, and it was the 3rd city across Canada. And I remember we went out for dinner, and Wayne and myself and some other people in Deepak, and it was at a great Indian restaurant. I can't tell you what the name of it, but the food was fantastic, and Deepak was very excited. And I remember watching him eat some chicken, right?
yeah.
And we were like, "Deepak, I thought you were a vegetarian." And he looks, and just the way Deepak can be, he goes, "Yes, I just told my body it's vegetable."
See, he's like a little boy. It's so I love that. I mean, it's just so much fun.
It was just great. It was wonderful. Well, Cynthia, obviously, you've had so many experiences. Is there anything in particular that you would like to share with our audience on how they can learn to start to shift, how they can get in touch with you. I know you have an e-zine that we'll make sure that we put down at in the description so that
Yes.
people have access to that.
Yeah, that's a great segue because I've got a website at realityshifters.com and my newsletter is the Reality Shifters newsletter. It's currently on Substack. I think that's a really great way for people to find me. A lot of people know about Substack these days. And so it seemed like the place to be, and it's been great so far. But all of my issues of the newsletter are archived on the realityshifters.com website, along with all of the firsthand reports I've been collecting for over 25 years.
Wow.
And I think that's wonderful. So if people wanted to know, like I'm trying to open my mind, how do I do it? I think a great way is just to go and start reading through these firsthand experiences that people have that they're sharing every single month with me. And I'm also including my take on, my thoughts on their experience. But it starts to give you a feeling that people all around the world are able to witness these basically straight out miracles happening. And you might think that it would be limited to one area or another, but when you read the reports, there's no limit. It's, reality shifting is happening on an epic scale. And this is our birthright. This is something that we can, each and every one of us, do. And it really, it's like open your mind to it. So read the newsletter, open your heart to it. I think the newsletter is full of love and joy. So it should be assisting in that too. So
Sure.
that would be a great start. Yeah.
Are you seeing an increase of the number of experiences or experiencers that are saying and reaching out saying, I've had something, or the younger people are tuned in a little bit more, or is it just everybody, anybody, wherever?
Yeah, it's across all ages and demographics. What I'm seeing with the younger people is there's a huge TikTok trend where they're really grabbing that phraseology of reality shifting and running with it. And that's good to see after, 25 years later. Then it's like, yeah, people get it. Now, a little bit of that may come off sounding like escapism. It started during the pandemic and they were reality shifting into Hogwarts, that kind of thing. But the point is, they're aware of some techniques. They're coming up with ways to relax their very hyperactive monkey mind, that left brain analytical chatter. They're finding ways to calm that down and stay focused on what they're doing. So there's just a lot of good there. I love that. The other big trend is people are starting to say, you can share my full name. That was not the case 25 years ago. And this includes reputable people, doctors, lawyers, and all that kind of thing. Originally, 25 years ago, people would ask, please use a pseudonym. I work for the U.S. government. I'm in the Pentagon. I just saw this weird shift, and I'm a general. You can't put my name. Or I work in the House of Representatives, or these would be high-level people, and obviously anonymity is important for to. But now that's the shift I'm seeing. I think that feeling that I'll be judged seems to be going away, and that's great because it shows it's becoming such a common phenomenon that the stigma isn't quite what it used to be.
Sure. Wonderful. Cynthia, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to be with us on the Wise Old Soul. I so appreciate you. Obviously, everybody can go over and check you out at realityshifters.com. That sounds like the place to go.
Yes, thank you. Absolutely. And then you can find me. I'm also on YouTube, Substack, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all the good places.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, again, thank
Lee.
you. I look forward to having this opportunity again in the near future.
Me too. Take good care.
Last evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you.